Hey everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Brandon. I am here with our amazing four panelists, and welcome to How to Make a Scene, our first live in-person session, one of 9 sessions we're having, some of which are on the radio and some of which are here, so thank you for coming. CoProsperity here, 3219 South Morgan. So I'm just going to introduce the series. We've had our first radio program and radio panel on June 20th, and that was amazing, moderated by Anthony, with Patricia Wen, Nell Taylor, and Andrea Yarbrough. So I'll just introduce this again from the announcement. How to Make a Scene is a conversation series about artist-run cultural ecosystems of the 1980s and 1990s in Chicago, launching June 20 on Lumpen Radio, continuing through October with 5 live conversations at CoProsperity. This series is a collaboration effort between Public Media Institute and MDW, with support from the Terra Foundation for American Art as part of the citywide initiative Art Design Chicago. The project aims to connect veteran artists, organizers, with artists working today through a combination of intimate events here and broadcasts on Lumpen Radio and live streams on Lumpen TV. The series will offer audience trailheads for further exploration of Chicago's storied history of alternative gallery spaces, independent publications, and socially engaged collectives. Moderators will lead varying forms of discussion with groups of artists who have built experimental infrastructures of support for themselves and their peers. These gatherings are serving as platforms for generational knowledge sharing, informal oral histories, and strategizing for the impact these artist ecosystems can have in the future. So our first conversation here launches with Anthony Stepter. So I'll introduce Anthony, and then Anthony will introduce our panelists, esteemed luminaries. So moderator Anthony Stepter is an organizer, educator, and curator from Grand Rapids, Michigan, now based in Chicago. He's the program director at ACRE, Artist Cooperative Residency and Exhibitions. Previously, Anthony was the assistant director of the Museum and Exhibition Studies program at UIC. He has an MA from SCIC and undergraduate degrees from Grand Valley State University. Anthony has worked at the Art Institute of Chicago, SCIC, and Grand Rapids Art Museum. As an independent curator, he has organized exhibitions and projects for venues like ACRE, University of Chicago's Arts Incubator, and Open Engagement. Anthony aims to foster connection between arts institutions and communities. Guided by anti-racist and feminist perspectives, his work invites publics to meaningfully engage with art and ideas while building supportive networks. So, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Anthony and our panelists.
Thank you. All right, are we all good? Well, first let me say thank you to Brandon and Nick, who are the lead organizers for this, to Stephanie and Charlie and all of the radio and tech team here and all of the CoPro staff. You all are out here on a hot Saturday doing the work to make this all possible. And I am so grateful and thankful to be a part of this conversation with 3 amazing artists and organizers. And so I'm going to read short bios for each of these 3 individuals that are up here. But let me just start by saying, and I may say many times, we could write whole books about the work that each of these folks have done. We could spend not just hours, but whole weekends and days talking about the work that they've done here in Chicago and elsewhere. So thank you all for being here as well. I'd like to introduce Carlos Arango, who is the former executive director of Casa Aztlan and president of the Frente Nacional De Inmigrantes. He is a prominent artist and organizer based in Chicago. He's associated with the Casa Aztlan, which we'll definitely be hearing more about today. It was a cultural and community center in the Pilsen neighborhood. Carlos joined the Casa in 1986 and became the executive director in 1994. Before his official involvement, he was already familiar with the Casa due to its notable advocacy work for immigrants and residents. Under Arango's leadership, Casa Aztlan continued to provide crucial services to the community, including education, immigration assistance, and cultural programs. Arango remains committed to helping immigrants become informed about social issues and participate in matters of social justice. Ed Marszewski is the director of the Public Media Institute, publisher of Lumpen Magazine and other titles. PMI includes the low-power community radio station, right over there, Lumpen Radio WLPNLP on 105.5 FM. PMI also programs the long-running cultural center, CoProsperity Chicago, which you all are sitting in right now, as well as the Buddy store located in the Chicago Cultural Center. Ed is also the co-founder of Maria's Packaged Goods and Community Bar, Kinski, Marz Community Brewing, and other projects. Ed was recently recognized by the Field Foundation and the MacArthur Foundation as one of 10 leaders for a new Chicago. He was an award recipient for 2024 for his work inspiring and supporting creative culture in Chicago. Nice job. Felicia Grant Preston is a visual artist and retired arts instructor. She was raised in Chicago, where she attended Chicago Public Schools. Preston received a BA in art from Southern Illinois University in 1976, an MS.Ed from Northern Illinois University in 1979, and an MA from Chicago State University in 2003. Her work has been included in the Paul R. Jones Collection at the University of Delaware, a well-known and significant collection of African-American art. Recent publications include the University of Delaware's Abstract and All That, as well as African Art, The Diaspora and Beyond by Daniel T. Parker. In 1987, Preston, along with Marva Pitchford Jolly, began planning for what would come to be known as Sapphire Crystals. Existing first as the title of an exhibition, an artists collective was soon formed to provide space for support and advancement of Black women artists. For more than 30 years, and with a changing group of members that numbered into dozens over time, Sapphire Crystals has been acknowledged by historians, galleries, and artists as a vital force in the history and present of Chicago's art communities. In recent years, the collective's work has been celebrated through exhibitions at Prairie State University, Woman Made Gallery, and the Bridgeport Art Center and the Logan Center for the Arts at the University of Chicago, among many others. Please join me in welcoming this wonderful panel of artists and organizers. One of the great things about having the artists, the organizers, these people here with us today is that if I got any notes wrong there, please correct me. Let me know if I got a date wrong or anything like that. That's part of what this event is about, sharing histories, sharing biographies, because these are really important stories and they don't always get told. And so I think that's at the heart, as Brandon mentioned, of this larger project called How to Make a Scene. So thank you all so much for being here. I wanted to start with a kind of broad question. Rather than sort of asking the origin story of your organization, maybe I would like to know, what was it that made you as an individual want to do collaborative work in addition to the work that you did as an individual artist, organizer, and person? Maybe Carlos, can we start with you?
Yeah, good afternoon to all. Well, I guess part of the process of organizing and the process of organizing around art is need a special collaboration of different sectors of the society. We need the perspectives of young people, the historical perspective that professors and the university give, the input of the student organizations of universities, and the understanding of reality. I guess what you see in the walls, even though it has been changed, is talk about our history, how to build a concept of unity, how to build a concept of rewrite history or write history, because the whole situation is the history and the way it has been written is, is fundamentally for the people who are the oppressor, and so the oppressed has to define the whole history. So I guess.
Yeah, so you're saying that you wanted to work against some of the dominant narratives by bringing in other perspectives and voices.
Yeah, especially talking about the 70s and the 80s, and Chicago, particularly in the Mexican community, we didn't have any representation, no political, no representation at any level. The thing we found is that communities was basically in a situation in which a lot of poverty, no security, and no schools, or schools in really bad conditions. A high school that is basically falling apart. So part of the question is the community come and try to rebuild these communities.
Yeah.
Try to talk about the history. I mean, particularly in Pilsen, when you have the historic question of the Chicago martyrs. It's a great history that that imply that our community was an immigrant community, and also was part of the movement in Mexico for the 8 hours day. I mean, as you know, all over the world, Primero de Mayo, May Day, is considered like International Workers' Day, except in the United States, except in Chicago. So that's something that show you the question of separation, of racism, and oppression. They deny the story, basically, to erase the story. So I guess our role is to bring back the story and say this is what people in the community has been done.
Yes, and Felicia, you and I were speaking along those lines actually before the panel started, and the importance of telling your own history in case someone else tries to tell it. But maybe you could also answer that question from your perspective. You know, you were a working artist before you co-founded Sapphire Crystals. So what was it about wanting to collaborate with other artists and other people that made it interesting to you?
Well, mine kind of goes back a little bit further. You know, I brought a couple of things here, just to kind of give you an idea of some of my experiences. One of the things that struck me from way back when I was in an undergrad and in grad school, they never talked about African American artists. Every now and then you would have a lecture on African art, but never on African American artists. So that was through undergrad and further into grad school. When I went from SIU to undergrad and then NIU. And I ended up at NIU getting an assistantship, which required me to work 20 hours a week as a part of and I received a stipend. However, one of the places that I worked in was a slide library. And this is where instructors would come in and get slides to prepare for their lectures. And I would have to file slides. And, you know, then of course I took history classes, but they never talked about African American art. So along the way, I found a list that I have kept all of these years.
That's the list.
And yeah, I mean, I never even knew the names of African American artists because they were never talked about. But I came up with a list that I found in the slide library, and it was headed as minor arts. So I wrote down exactly what it said. And at the time, I had no idea. I wrote down this list just so I would know the names of African American artists. And it was a pretty long list, like I said, and referred to as minor arts. And as I began to get more information on African American artists, I think the first book I purchased was at the Art Institute. And after that, I started collecting whatever books came out on African American artists I was collecting. Now it's easy through the internet to find as much information as you can. But when I was in grad school, the computer was probably fit on a little bit on a wall about that size. And you punched in cards and you put them in if you needed some information. But I just did this so I would know the names. And like I said, as more names started coming out, more information started coming out, I started learning about who African American artists were. And some of the heaviest hitters in African American art were on this list and listed as minor arts. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you may be with African American artists, but off the top of my head, one of the greatest ones that I saw, and I only happened to see it because there was a piece of his work at the Art Institute, and it was a charcoal drawing. It was by Charles White, and it was so beautiful. I grew up drawing in pencil, and the first time I saw a piece of his work, I started drawing in charcoal. So primarily, my work is non-representational, or what most people refer to as abstract. But I draw from time to time just to keep up the skill. But I just love color, and these people on this list were, like I said, they were dynamites in their own times. And I'm grateful that I, at least at some point, got a chance to see their names. So this was back in probably 1976. And so that was my first experience of knowing any names of African American artists.
Sure. And then as you progressed as an artist, taking inspiration from some of these early experiences, I've read some accounts, but I don't want to speak for anyone. I want to hear from you. You know, what was it like? What was the thing that made you and Marva kind of think we should work together?
Well, Marva and I, initially, I had some friends who had just returned back from school in Oklahoma, and they were in a group called Mud Peoples, and they wanted me to be a part of the group. And Marva said, "Oh, no, she's a painter. She can't be a part of this group. We're all clay people." But at the time, I had just started experimenting, because I love working with color and texture, and I had just started experimenting with plaster as a means of creating texture. And, you know, I kind of, along the way, finalized it. It's a little bit better. I used plaster and paper pulp. But at the time, I had just started doing that. And Marva overheard some guys that were plasterers, and they referred to it as mud. And that's how she allowed me to become a member of Mud Peoples. And there were only 6 of us as a part of the group. That was the highest number of people in the group. And one by one, people started leaving the group. And then the last 2, aside from Marva and I, they were a couple, and they decided to leave the group. And I think they thought because we were the only 2 left, that was going to be the end of us. But that's not the case. It was a cold winter day. We had to sit out in our car. You know, we would sit in one car, warm up our cars. And she says, "Well, are you ready to quit?" And I'm like, "No, are you ready to quit?" So we continued on as Mud Peoples. So Marva had said at one point that she always wanted to do a show of Black women artists. And I said, "Okay, I'm good with that." And we started making plans, taking notes about how we wanted to do this show. She was very familiar with the Southside Community Arts Center, which I only learned about after she and I met. And they agreed to do a show. At that time, I was also co-chair of the Arts and Letters Committee in my sorority. And I worked with my committee, and they assisted us in putting together the show, although they did the reception, but we did the work of trying to locate all the African American women artists that we knew. And so we put it all together, and the show, which was titled Sapphire Crystals, turned into Sapphire Crystals, the group.
It's so interesting to hear, you know, Carlos make the connection to other international movements, cooperative, collective movements, and you just mentioned multiple organizations, the Mud Peoples group, the sorority. So it seems like this notion, this practice of collective organizing and working was nothing new to you when you decided to start Sapphire Crystals. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And Ed, maybe this is a good place to pivot to you, because I think, you know, in the introduction, we listed many literal sites and places, physical buildings where you've started organizations or projects. None of them are called Ed's Place. It seems like you do them with, there's always other people involved. Is that, how does that mesh with your individual practice, if there is one?
Well, I dropped out of art school in Champaign-Urbana. And the reason I did, I think, is because I drank the Kool-Aid of the revolution. I mean, honestly, I believe that the movement of movements, learning about, the people's history of the United States, the people's history of the world through authors like Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky, et cetera, the old white men who radicalized kids back in those days when you had to read magazines and things to learn what was happening in the world, converted me from using my kind of like interests in the arts and culture, partying, freaking out, to work with individuals who became activists within our campus of University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. I had some professors that were pretty cool who helped guide us on some of our actions, but primarily my work was centered around working with other people to do actions, whether it was painting the alma mater or hanging up giant posters or attacking frat boys with corn cobs, whatever it was. And we started a publication in which writers and artists would contribute and poets would contribute their poetry. And we would reprint articles from the radical alternative press regarding what was happening in our day. And I basically became committed to being part of alternative journalism in a way, so that we could help amplify the stories and struggles of those communities that were opposing corporate globalization of the universe, right? Or trying to bring to light these alternative histories, these parallel universes that we all lived in. The ones that you guys were struggling, the communities that you were in, would be ones that we would learn about and help amplify to our readers or communities. So when I got to Chicago, I got an internship at In These Times, and I started working there. I
didn't know that.
And immediately I realized that the left press was really boring and annoying. And I started thinking, well, how can we make the left actually more interesting or fun? Because in Champaign-Urbana, dealing with a lot of very conservative folks, people coming from all over the burbs, et cetera, who are very not interested in alternative ideas, or were the kids who would shout pro-war chants during the first Iraq War. How do you convince people? Like, I had a belief that if we had all the information about a topic or an issue, that we could all agree on the best decision about a thing. So I had a naive belief that were we just merely informed, properly informed about something, we wouldn't go to war. We wouldn't oppress others. We would stop the centuries of colonization. We would face up to our evil past, right? Of course I'm wrong. Years later, I know I'm wrong. But I believed it was an information war. It was a struggle. So I got involved in trying to do everything I could to promote ideas that were outside of the mainstream, or promote campaigns that were in support of the people over power and money. So I went to universities, Columbia College and SEIC, and put up flyers that said, look, wanting to start an alternative publication in Chicago, with a little cutout thing with your phone number, and gave people my phone number. And I said I would meet here at what was that awesome diner by Columbia College's main building on the corner on Michigan. What the hell was that called? What's that? No, it's Shitty Diner. It was amazing. We met there. So we'll meet Tuesday the 14th at 4 p.m. 6 people showed up. We started a thing called The Paper. We couldn't agree on a name, so we just generically called it The Paper. And then we started covering what was happening in Humboldt Park, local issues, as well as national and international news, political commentary and such. And we did it out of the office of In These Times. So I would make collages, illustrations and stuff, using my skills as a really bad artist to do stuff and design the publication and stuff. But my practice was more performative, I think, in a way. Even as an early age, I was a facilitator, I guess, of things, and what people call curators. So that's kind of how I got engaged in the various communities in Chicago. My job was to cover your communities. My job was to amplify the voices of the various communities. And then, of course, when we landed in Chicago in the early 90s, we landed in the Wicker Park, Bucktown area, which was a very highly contentious zone of gentrification, ongoing through the 70s and 80s. At that time, that neighborhood was probably not known as a safe neighborhood to live in because it was on the other side of the highway, if you recall, right? So we were really confounded when we realized the role of artists in the gentrifying neighborhoods. Sure. So we were the first publications, and first group of people that had a lot of readership to challenge the role of the artist in such organizations or festivals as Around the Coyote, or just merely coming in and taking storefronts over and starting art spaces, et cetera.
And by this you mean challenge artists to think about the role that they're playing in the changes, the gentrification that's happening in these neighborhoods.
Yes.
Yeah.
So being complicit in that change and also challenging ourselves and admitting it and seeing how do we mitigate the worst effects of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And of course we failed.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, but I want to say that it's very interesting to hear you sort of locate some of the roots of your early work in the publication model, which is maybe inherently a little bit more collaborative than what we think of when we think of some visual arts practices and things like that.
By nature, it has to be, right? It's because you have so many contributors working on it. So it allowed us to be introduced to so many different forms of cultural activity in different communities, activists, educators, writers, poets, artists, illustrators, comic artists, et cetera.
Yeah. And so you also, Ed, mentioned a little bit, and I'd like to pose this question to the whole group, which is essentially like, what do you feel is different today? You were talking about being in a different neighborhood, Casa Aztlan, the space is no longer there, developers bought it. These are things that are obvious shifts, but I'm interested to hear from each of you, what feels sort of different today doing the work, especially the group work, the collective work, what feels different today from when you were doing it in those early days?
I'll just start by saying that, when I was younger, when we were all younger, we did things because we wanted to do things. We believed in doing these things. And the people you work with work together with a common mission most of the time. And, of course, you have disagreements and people would split up. And it seemed, I learned that by just merely working with people who wanted to do things, you could accomplish anything, whether it's starting a festival at an amazing institution that some older artists recognize these lunatics as being worth taking a chance for, right? We would start organizing events, festivals, et cetera, together, and that belief, I think, allowed us to challenge ourselves and allowed us to grow and do things that we probably never imagined doing. For publications, obviously, nobody reads on paper anymore, so doing a publication seems like a futile effort at creating some sort of artifact that will be found in someone's bathroom 6 years after they're evicted. So it's nice to be part of the detritus and like some of the random stuff that one would find in a deserted building. But the publications are important because it actually becomes a physical record.
Yes.
The digital era I've lost everything. There is no proof of existence of anything from 2000 something to today if I lose my iCloud password. Obviously all the drives, the zip drives, the hard drives, the broken Macintoshes, the different softwares that were used, makes everything disappear into the abyss of what is probably reality anyways. But nothing has changed except for the frequency of publications for me. Obviously we were very lucky to work with the FCC to get a license. How the hell they gave us a license is beyond. There must be some lumpen in the federal bureaucracy that recognizes the power of the word lumpen. So these mistakes, these certainties of chance that appear allow you to take opportunities to do something with them. And I think those things still exist today. I think one of the things I wanted to say, though, was that developing these projects and doing these things today is different because over time, you know, we were kind of like a radical, upstart, crazy group of people trying to tear down the pig system through reading a tabloid publication, where we've now, over through the years, we are now the establishment. We're the man. We are just another thing, an entity, an institution worth deriding.
Well, Felicia, let me pose the question to you. It's interesting to hear Ed also talk about this possibility of a loss of information, a loss of work and labor, and you started by showing us this amazing list that you have. You know, from your perspective, how are things a bit different from
I don't know.
that moment?
For me, I find, and many of my contemporaries, you know, just trying to be seen, so that has not changed a lot. You know, so it's like I'm always trying to get my foot in whatever door I can get in. And, you know, whether it's going online and trying to submit some work to get in a show, and I'm not tech savvy at all. And everybody has their own platform, and sometimes it drives me absolutely crazy trying to get my images of my work or my resume or whatever I need to put into whatever site it happens to be. You know, and sometimes I just get frustrated and say, I'll just pass on that one. But, you know, still, that's the big thing, just trying to get in, trying to fit in. And it's still something that I find myself struggling with. You know, I've been around a lot. When you mentioned about Around the Coyote, I participated in shows in Around the Coyote because before, when they weren't certifying our teachers at CPS, and that was when they had the Board of Examiners, if anybody's been around long enough to remember that, I was certified. I came out of grad school certified by the state, but CPS had its own certification. And, you know, so they weren't certifying our teachers. So it took me years before I finally got in a position. And I started off at Schurz High School. And that is why I became familiar with Around the Coyote, because sometimes the expressway would be, you know, would really be bad going home. So, and I've always lived on the south side. So sometimes I would go down Milwaukee, and so I'm always looking around at everything, trying to figure, oh, wait a minute, there's something going on over there. So that's how I came to find out about that. And I did a couple of shows at Around the Coyote.
You just talking about that reminds me of just how special that neighborhood was, despite the fact that we were ruining that neighborhood. It was really an incredible time. You would walk around and go, what is that person doing? Why does this storefront exist? Who's upstairs on the third floor with that sculpture hanging out of the window? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a wonderful time, despite the horror of our participation and its destruction.
Well, I don't know. It's been so many years, you know. I don't know whether it even still exists in the way that it was.
The mythology exists. The myth of Wicker Park being this bohemia will be infinite, I believe.
Right.
But it no longer exists.
Yeah. Well, I know that, you know, at that time, people were beginning to move in. And so it was taking on a whole nother face or phase, whichever way you want to put it. But I'm seeing the same thing that is happening in different communities. When I was a hearing impaired resource teacher, I had some of my students that lived in Pilsen, and also the same thing when I was at Schurz. So watching these communities change over time. Some of them were communities that people didn't want to go in. I don't want to go there, you know, because they were afraid and they thought they were all dangerous. But they were communities where people were able to afford to live there when they couldn't live in other places. So I just, you know, but over time, you saw all of them change and become gentrified. And some of the people who lived there actually being pushed out or seeing their taxes rise so high that they can't afford to live there anymore. They have to move out to other places. Fortunately, the same thing happened. I'm in Bronzeville, and the same thing happened there. When we were in Bronzeville, I'm telling you, our friends thought we had either lost our mind because it was that long ago that we moved in, because that's what they call the low end, and the low end was not considered the good end. And, but as things began to change, I couldn't afford to live in Bronzeville now if I had to try to come into Bronzeville as it is. So I have a long-time residence exemption on my taxes, to keep my taxes from going up so high that as a retiree I can't afford them. So I can possibly imagine that other people in Pilsen and in Wicker Park are going through the same things that I have gone through. And like I said, our friends thought we were crazy. They didn't understand why we were moving into the low end. But then after a while, they figured it out.
Well, that's a really nice segue, I think, to you, Carlos. Casa Aztlan does not exist in the same physical space as it once was. In preparing for this talk, I did some research and I found on CAN TV an old video made in the 90s by youth at Casa Aztlan sort of protesting and informing people about the TIF district and what would happen with the TIF district. And right now we're in Pilsen, that same conversation is happening. So this seems like a very important question for your work, this question about what has changed and what feels like it's still the similar struggler.
Yeah, well, first I want to say that I still prefer paper.
This is a pro-paper
Books.
panel.
And part of that is because, we created a lot of newspapers in the movement. Sin Fronteras was created in San Antonio, Texas, and then went to Los Angeles. We have an organization called Casa Hermandad General de Trabajadores. Casa was a leftist organization that dealing with immigrants, has like pre-party formation. And we have tremendous relations with the Puerto Rican community. And was this saying, Boricua Mexicano luchando mano a mano. And then in Chicago we create a lot of publications in different forms, and something that we believe. Even I do the translation of the Old Chicago City News for quite a time, and related to people like Slim Coleman and that the brother goes already, and Razana Pangri, and some connection with the Black Panthers, and that was very, very, very important in terms of political formation and understanding the situation, and particularly because precisely from that coalition we will be able to build the campaign of Harold Washington, the best mayor of the city of Chicago ever. And the question of the TIF was a tremendous. When I came to Chicago, I found Chicago something very interesting, with a lot of bars, muchas barras, muchas cantinas across the street in 18th Street. You can walk to one to the other to get home and have a couple beers. And also, it was a high level of violence, and the homes basically where a lot of people moved to the suburbs, the white fly, what they call, moved to the suburbs, and the houses stay in really bad condition. We found doing campaign for Harold Washington and doing campaign for Juan Solis and Jesus Chuy Garcia. The thing we found was very, very difficult to get into the homes, and the people were really scared that you go and knock on the door, especially because during that time the Immigration and Naturalization Services, today called ICE, but INS then. What they do is do raids and deportations in the neighborhoods. So that reality was very, very difficult. Even people going to Cinevilla, which is in Loomis, close to the Lozano Library, they have buses to take people to the detention center. So we saw all that, and in that process, I remember talking to Ramiro Borja, one of the older organizers, and we have the coalition against the 21 plan, because we found out that the mayor Daley at that time has a really incredible idea how to expand to South Loop, and then Pilsen is 15 minutes. This is the same. It's 15 minutes from downtown, and you take a bus and go there, or the train, and obviously that land has an incredible price. Our community didn't know, because our community were in the process of people living, the immigrants living 10, 12 people in the same building. Something similar. If you read the book, I forgot the name of the book, as explain the situation of the immigrants from Europe, and
the stockyards, the jungle.
The jungle,
Yeah.
and then, see, you have a precise perception. If you read the jungle, you can see in different perspective Pilsen. But rapidly, we start seeing that development start coming into the community. Part of the question is precisely to the TIF, because the TIF is supposedly to give money the communities that are depressed, and they try to do to the commercial area. We fought that and get in the industrial area. See, the whole question we say is we need jobs, and the jobs we need is you have to employ people in the community. And we confront Jane Byrne, the mayor, in different occasions on that, and all political machine that used to be in Chicago. Obviously, since then, at some point, people start buying the land in Pilsen. The owners start selling the houses. It's continued pressure today, because it's around 40% of people who own homes who are from the community. The others are developers, and then also the question of a restoration project that create some kind of homes, affordable homes, I would say, because they are not really affordable. But it's subsidized by government.
Sure.
And then the whole discussion that to build Section 8, and then a problem with the racism, that says, well, what population you're going to bring to Pilsen. So was this discussion. I guess the discussion we won when we will be able to put men for bear in the Board of Education, and elect Mayor Washington. But since then, there's a lot of development happening, and now the taxes, the tax increase is enormous, almost 100% in Pilsen. Wow. So people, I don't know, it's going to be very hard to maintain people in the community. Yeah. In the meantime, we create a library, we create schools, we create playgrounds. In the meantime, we try to create an environment in the community that more friendly, and also bring fundamentally the whole question of the arts. Yeah. I try to combine with artists from Mexico to have our festival, and the festival we have the opportunity to bring jarochos from Veracruz and dancing in 18th Street. So it's just, I mean, this experience is really incredible because the community is still in that process. Today is all cultural festivals are more a bit like a business. Yeah. And the Coyote Days already gone. And the buildings that Ruiz-Belvis Cultural Center precisely was in Milwaukee Street, in which we organized the May Day marches. Yeah. And with Jack Spiegel, that already gone. Yeah. And then Ruiz-Belvis, I think, lost the building or have to move from the building. Yeah. And we have a new situation. Pilsen today looks like, in a way, looks like, yo digo, la Colonia Condesa in Mexico City. Everybody go to La Colonia Condesa in Mexico.
Well, let me ask you about that, Carlos. And I just want to say we're already at the sort of tail end of this conversation, so I want to pose a question to the group about how to make sure. What is your advice to other artists and organizers on preserving these histories and legacies? And maybe, Carlos, I'll start with you with a very specific question about the mural at Casa Aztlan. And we know that it was destroyed and then reconstituted in some way. So what is your advice for how to preserve these histories of this kind of organizing? And specifically, tell us about that process and the gesture of recreating the mural. How did that feel to you?
Well, I guess we have to defend our walls, because we have to defend whatever. This I cannot say. We have to defend our walls. We have to make sure that when the art is renovated, that still we're talking about, continue talking about our history. So, in that sense, the murals has a concept, a representative community. If you start painting something that doesn't make sense, I mean the spirit of the community, the spirit of Aztlan per se. I mean, Casa Aztlan it's not only. I mean, Casa Aztlan per se is building. Aztlan is a concept. Sure. It's a spirit. It's a national concept. I mean, precisely in Colorado, in the spiritual plan of Aztlan, they recognize that the Southwest as Aztlan, as another nation, and. I think that discussion has to be going on historically, but we have to precisely recover by the art, by the walls, by the expression of the artist, by the exhibitions, by the music, by the festivals, to try to rebuild the concept, the concept of cultural concept of a nationality, because it's what really need. In Mexico and here is a lot of changes, and I think those changes can be communicate and expand in terms of our culture.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating idea, defending the walls, and in this case, you're talking literally about murals and the culture that produced those murals. Felicia, how would you recommend other artists and organizers? What would you suggest that they be on the watch for in preserving their histories?
Well, the show that we had at the Sapphire Crystals had at the Bridgeport Arts Center, I was approached by a woman who worked with the Woodson Regional Library, and they want all our information to be digitized so it is available to the public. And now we're kind of at limbo because another member of the group found out that now Southside Community Arts Center does some digitizing. So now they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should meet as a group and decide which space we want to send it to. So that's kind of in limbo right now. But however it is, it'll get done. But then I have the most documents. I know because Marv and I started together. Every handwritten note that we wrote, and sometimes it was a handwritten note to be typed later for, to let people know that we were doing this show. So I have, over the years, have all this documentation. Now, other people coming in later may have postcards from the various shows that we've done and things like that. But when it comes to really to have the real history and the real information, it's all in my possession. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what people want to say. But like I said, my first option was to send it to the first person who asked. Now, I'm very familiar with the Southside Community Arts Center. Matter of fact, that's where we got our start. And I do volunteer there from time to time too. So, but I don't know when and why. I think maybe they got a grant to do some digitizing, and so they want to have the information. So in one shape or form, it is going to be out there, and it's going to be out there for the public. So I just recommend that if you are part of an organization or you have information about a group that you formed or have been a part of, make sure that information gets out there into the public so it becomes history, because it is our history. And one of the things that I wanted to say first, I brought my little note here, because at one point, a woman from the University of Chicago, I can't remember her name, but it's up here somewhere, wrote something about sapphire crystals. But she went to a member who became a part of the group a few years after it got started. So when she wrote, because she was doing a whole thing on the South Side art scene, and she wrote something about sapphire crystals and failed to include my name. So what I did was write to the University of Chicago and say, if this book is republished, make sure it has the correct information. And in my little pile here, I have a copy of that letter that I sent out, but I never got a response from them. So anyway, so I would say, make sure that your information, you're not written out of your own story.
So they might not have responded, but now we know. So, and that's, you raise a really interesting and important point, which is that, in my research here and elsewhere, occasionally I'll see that an organization or a group has archival material in two different places, which can sometimes make sense, but also can complicate whether or not someone gets the whole story. So, Ed, we'll end with you on this, asking you for some advice about preserving histories. You were the paper advocate. How do you think about? But you also raised the specter of the digital loss. So how do you think about this?
Basically, no one cares about your history. So you have to make sure that you document and create your own histories, right? And the members within the cultural organization, political organizations, for example, they know the value of owning your history. Artists don't. Scenes don't. Some of the best documents you'll find are photography, right? Great photos of the party or the scene or whatever. Recordings maybe are watched online of videos of performances that you may have been at. So, we used to joke that, we were covering an alternative history of Chicago, the many alternative histories of Chicago as Lumpen existed in its monthly format. We were proud of the role we played at documenting, creating a little timestamp of a thing that happened, whether it was through an advert or a party or an event. Today, I continue to believe that you need to cover your own history since the journalism has really been in a tough place since the advent of the social media, of Facebook, etc. Journalists are a dying breed. They don't get paid to do their work as often as they should. If you don't record and document your own thing, you will be forgotten for sure. So even when you're part of a thing, an artist collective, a group, there's a way for you to engage by documenting your own work, providing it to an archive. We were very lucky back in the 90s and early 2000s. The University of Wisconsin-Madison would subscribe to their zine. They have a great zine archive. There are institutions that archive the publications. But the problem with that, of course, with just doing a publication is that it's merely like a small percentage of a recording of a scene or a thing that happened. There's no way to record these lives, these universes that you lived in a sense. It is the memories and the stories. We're very lucky as an organization here that we're able to tell the stories of so many different people, but we don't tell enough of them, and it's a sad thing. I would suggest to people that when they're part of an organization or group that they document what they're doing, even holding on to them personally, publishing them online, and just doing what they can to kind of share their histories through oral histories, or things like this with friends and scenes. It astounds me that there's so many kids today that go to these schools have no clue the history of Chicago, especially within the art milieus, the complete kind of lack of knowledge or interest in the past is something that you have to combat.
Sure.
How do you make someone care about what happened?
Yeah.
You can't. So the thing is, what I found very interesting about this talk, and I'm sorry to just segue, the strategy of fighting for political power is valuable. Look at what we have today out of your movement. We have Chewy, right? We have these outstanding leaders advocating for the rights of various communities. Another thing that you reminded me was the kind of like the death of a scene or a culture or a neighborhood or whatever is inevitable. There's always change. So despite our our complicity in these changes or resisting changes, there is always change. And so you have to find the pockets of buying a home early in a neighborhood that people think you're nuts to be in. You have to find these strategies of purchasing a dump like this and holding on to it despite the pressures of real estate and the taxes going up. So there's millions of strategies, there's millions of stories. I guess people have to maybe pause and take time to listen or to investigate those stories.
Felicia.
I did a documentary that's on YouTube on Sapphire Crystals. So if you get a chance, look it up on YouTube. The filmmaker that I used was David Weathersby, who's done a great job with some of the things that he's put out. So if you get a chance,
thank you. It's an excellent documentary. Maybe we can get PMI to post it, cross-post it. But yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually a really nice note to end on, with another little pivot to say that this is number 2 in a series of many, many conversations that are part of the How to Make a Scene conversation series that will be occurring both on the radio, on Lumpen Radio, and here in person. So that's one strategy. You can come and find out about some of those histories of artists organizing and people making culture for themselves and preserving those histories here in Chicago in the future. I want to say another big thank you, and please join me in thanking our panelists. This was so wonderful, and I'm so honored to have gotten to ask you these questions. Yes.